The Jones Day approach in resolving a tax case involves 4 stages. I like to call them 4 acts of a play. Act 1 is the examination. If you go unagreed, Act 2 is dealing with the IRS Appeals Office. Act 3 is alternative dispute resolution and the techniques that are available to you. That's what I want to talk about now. Most notably, the one technique that I like to use the most, and that's the IRS post-appeals mediation. It's an adversarial process that we borrowed from commercial litigation, and it gives the taxpayer and the appeals officer they're dealing with an opportunity to settle their case while it's still pending in appeals. Post-appeals mediation is considered when the appeals officer and the taxpayer just simply cannot reach a settlement. However, one or both parties believes that maybe if we had the involvement of an independent party, i.e. a mediator, who would be neutral, then possibly we could settle this case. So what are the types of things that a post-appeals mediator could help resolve? 1, legal issues. Maybe the 2 parties, the taxpayer and the appeals officer, are simply interpreting a statute differently, and you need an independent party to kind of help you on what the hazards of litigation are for both parties on those interpretations. But then 2, which is where I find it advantageous, are on factual issues, especially dealing with valuation. As we all know, valuation is a very hotly contested issue in the tax world, and the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So having an independent party to kind of help you on looking at your hazards of litigation as to the valuation that you're proposing can be extremely advantageous. But then lastly, I've even seen it where taxpayers are seeking competent authority assistance, but before they do, they can go to the post-appeals mediation route to see if they can get it resolved there. When is the best time to make this request? Because you need to know mediation will not occur unless both parties agree to it. And the IRS is not going to agree to all post-appeals mediation requests. So while you're going along the process with the appeals officer and you see that you're hitting a dead end, you need to raise it at that point so you can get a feel for, is the appeals officer going to agree to go to post-appeals mediation? Because maybe they think it's the best option because they believe you need to hear from an independent party as to the merits of your position. What I've heard a lot of is the IRS saying that in some instances, they will not accept your application for post-appeals mediation if the parties are just too far apart. One, I don't see in the IRS guidance that that is really a way to deny the request, but even if it is, I actually believe that that is probably one of the best opportunities for mediation. So just because the parties are far apart, I don't believe mediation shouldn't occur. And just to even borrow from commercial litigators, and now even the court systems, most appellate courts require the parties to do mandatory mediation regardless of how far apart they are. Because in the end, it is simply a process where each party believes that if an independent person is involved, then they will be able to help guide the parties to a resolution. The mediator is actually another IRS appeals officer. So that makes folks very nervous, saying, why would I go through this process when it's just going to be a colleague of the appeals officer that I'm mediating against? I had those same reservations first too. But then as I went through the process, I realized, how do mediators judge themselves? No one advertises, hey, only 18% of my cases settle. No, these mediators inside the IRS are trained mediators. They want the cases to settle because that is the way that they perform their job and how they are judged by their job. And so to the extent that the taxpayer is still concerned that maybe there may be a bias with that mediator who is also an appeals officer, there is the opportunity for you as a taxpayer to bring your own mediator to the mediation. Who do I usually like to turn to? First of all, you have to turn to somebody who is qualified to be a mediator. But beyond that, I like to try to find someone, especially if it's a factual issue, that is not a tax attorney. Someone who is not really trained in tax, but who can just simply break down the simple factual issue.